I used to believe success was armor, until the night it became a target on my back. If you've ever had your moment stolen by someone you trusted, or felt the sting of betrayal just as you finally tasted victory, stay with me. This one's going to cut deep, because the downfall didn't start with a scandal. It started with a toast, and a lie that echoed louder than any applause. I'm Elyra Novin. I'm 37, senior counsel at a top-tier law firm in Boston, and that night, I was supposed to become partner. But back then, I wasn't basking in achievement. I was standing under a chandelier, frozen, as the world around me shifted. It was July. The Charles River shimmered just beyond the glass balcony. Warm air drifted in with the scent of lavender and wood polish. Inside, the lights glowed gold, soft jazz curling around champagne flutes. I wore midnight blue silk, a rare smile. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. Cassian raised his glass first. He wore that tailored smugness like it cost more than the tux. To anyone else, he was charming, magnetic. To me, a landmine with a voice? I just want to say, he said smoothly, the room going still, how proud we all are of Elyra, truly. Even if the firm doesn't yet know about the missing funds. My smile died before I could lower the glass from my lips. There was laughter at first, nervous, scattered, then silence. Chairs creaked, a fork dropped. My breath caught in my throat, burning. And there he was, Cassian, still smiling but colder now, sharper. I heard someone whisper my name. I set the glass down slowly. My fingers trembled, not from guilt, but from the familiar sting of being blindsided by family. What are you talking about? I asked, voice barely steady. Cassian shrugged. Just a concern I thought the partners should be aware of. A discrepancy in the Hartford account. I'd hate for it to come out later. The partners exchanged glances. Maris, my stepmother, avoided my eyes entirely, her mouth a tight line. She always did that, when things got messy. My jaw tightened. I looked at her. She reached for her drink instead. I wanted to scream, but all I did was straighten my spine. Cassian gave a slight bow, like he'd just done me a favor. Then he raised his glass again. To integrity, he said. There it was, the kill shot. Laughter resumed, uneasy, fragmented. But the damage was done. The eyes around me no longer held pride, only suspicion. I looked at him and thought, you really did it this time. And he looked right back, as if to say, what are you going to do about it? I stood there, nodding politely, swallowing shards of rage. Inside, something shifted, not shattered, sharpened. I took a slow breath, fingers tightening around the base of the champagne flute. Not to throw it, to remember how it felt in my hand. Because the next time I raised a glass, it wouldn't be to celebrate. It would be to bury him. He turned his back, clinking glasses with a partner I once mentored, and in that moment, as the room went on without me, I vowed something I'd never dared before. This time, I'm not walking away. Not from him, not from the truth, and definitely not from the storm I was about to unleash. They didn't look at me the same the next morning. Not in the elevator, not in the break room, and definitely not in the Monday partner meeting. Whispers had already spread like spilled ink, impossible to contain, impossible to trace. I walked into the boardroom, clutching my case file like a shield. The glass walls around me made everything feel colder, too bright, too exposed. I could see my own reflection in the conference table, jaw tight, eyes hollow. Cassian was already seated. He didn't look up. Of course not. He'd already taken his victory lap. Elyra, Gregory, one of the senior partners, cleared his throat, not unkindly. Cassian's brought forward some documents this morning. We'd like to go over them with you. Documents. He made it sound so clinical, as if they were just facts on paper and not a dagger sliding between my ribs. Cassian folded his hands, his voice dripping concern. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but then the client trust account for Hartford Holdings came up a few thousand short. I thought it was probably a clerical error until I noticed it happened more than once. My fingernails pressed into the folder in my lap. My tongue felt like sand. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were ledgers, printouts, bank statements, fakes. I could already see the inconsistencies, fonts that didn't match, signatures slightly off, but it wouldn't matter. Not right away. He was performing, and they were watching. I met Gregory's eyes. "These are forgeries," he blinked. "Can you prove that?" I wanted to scream. I shouldn't have to. Instead, I said, "Yes, but not in 5 minutes." A beat of silence. Cassian leaned back, looking pleased. "I told you, she's under a lot of stress. Promotion, late nights, mistakes happen." "I didn't make a mistake." My voice cracked. Just slightly, but he heard it. He always heard the cracks. "And I didn't touch that account." "Then you shouldn't have anything to worry about," he said, calm and gracious like a spider wrapping silk. Gregory nodded slowly. "We'll conduct a formal review, internal audit. It'll be handled discreetly. You'll both cooperate fully." I forced a nod, stood up. My chair scraped the floor louder than I wanted it to. Cassian remained seated. He smiled up at me. "Good luck, sis." The hallway outside felt longer than I remembered. My heels clicked fast, loud, erratic, like the pulse hammering in my throat. I locked myself in my office, closed the blinds, sat at my desk and stared. And then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I called Maris. She answered after the 4th ring. "Elyra? You knew." It came out sharper than I meant, or maybe exactly how I meant. A pause. Then, "Knew what?" "Cassian, the accusation, the party. You didn't even look at me." She sighed, soft, measured. "I didn't know he was going to do it like that, but I've always told you, he's impulsive." "Impulsive?" I laughed. It broke mid-breath. "He accused me of stealing. He's your brother, not by blood. That doesn't matter." I stared at the photo on my desk. Me, Dad, Maris, Cassian, taken 15 years ago in Cape Cod. Everyone was smiling, except me. I'd forgotten that until now. "I didn't do it," I said low. "I hope not." That was her answer. Not "I know you didn't." Not "We'll fix this," just "I hope not." I hung up. The silence afterward was thick, like fog against glass. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, or sleep, or vanish entirely, but instead, I turned to the Hartford files on my desk. I needed to think. Cassian didn't just want my job. He wanted my name, my future. He wanted to bury me beneath a mountain of suspicion so deep I'd never climb out. And I needed to understand why now. Why this? I opened the folder, started comparing line by line. The forged documents weren't sloppy. They were strategic. My hand froze midway through highlighting a discrepancy. There, on the edge of the one ledger, was a signature. Mine. Perfectly mimicked. Almost. A tremor of dread slid down my spine. He'd been planning this for a long time. How many times had I let him near my desk? My files? My passwords? My eyes burned. I blinked hard and kept reading. I circled another mismatch, then another. But the more I found, the more it hurt, because facts didn't matter if no one wanted to see them. By noon, a formal notice hit my inbox. Preliminary suspension pending audit findings. Do not access sensitive client files. Translation, you're guilty until proven otherwise. I left the office before anyone could see me cry. Boston's July heat hit like a wall as I stepped outside. The air was sticky with impending rain, and the smell of hot pavement curled into my lungs. I walked. Nowhere in particular, just away. I passed the riverfront, the cafe where Cassian and I used to sit on Sunday mornings before everything got ugly, before I realized he never asked how I was, only what I was working on. I kept walking. I ended up in front of Dad's old house. It's been empty for years. Maris refuses to sell it, claims it's still his, somehow. But I think she can't let go of the story she told herself, that we were ever a real family. I stood there a long time, watching the shutters sway in the breeze. Then something shifted in me. Not a breakdown, something harder, sharper. If he wants a war, he picked the wrong woman to frame. I pulled out my phone, dialed the only number that made sense now. "Jasper Kane," the voice answered. Steady, familiar. "Jasper, it's me." A pause. "Elyra, I heard about the party." "Then you know." "I know Cassian plays dirty," he said quietly. I let that sit, then said, "I need help." "You'll have it." And just like that, something clicked back into place. Not hope, but fire. The rain started just before midnight. It tapped softly against my apartment windows, a steady rhythm that should have been soothing, but all it did was make the silence louder. I stood barefoot in the living room, the city lights blinking behind me like distant warnings. Half-packed boxes were still stacked by the wall, remnants of a life I thought was finally moving forward, and then Cassian happened. Again. I reached for the bourbon on the kitchen counter, poured just enough to feel the burn. The amber liquid caught the faint glow of the stove light. Liquid courage, or maybe just habit. I don't know why I opened the drawer. Maybe I was looking for a receipt, or maybe I just needed to touch something that wasn't digital, something real. But there it was. Wedged between old bills and an unused checkbook, a small white envelope, yellowed at the corners. My name written in my father's handwriting, E.N. My fingers hovered over it. That script used to make me feel safe. Now it made my stomach twist. I sat down slowly at the edge of the couch. The letter was sealed, unopened. I didn't even remember putting it there, but I remembered the night I got it. I was 19. It had been pouring then, too. I'd just come home from college for fall break, soaked, exhausted. And Maris had been waiting with a plate of lasagna and too much tension in her smile. Dad never came down that night. Said he was tired, but he'd slipped this envelope into my overnight bag. Quiet. No explanation. I never opened it. Back then, I thought it was a birthday note or a check. Now, I wasn't so sure. My fingers broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet folded neatly. My father's words in blue ink. Elyra, if anything ever happens and I'm not around to explain, trust your instincts about Cassian. He's been jealous of you since the day you arrived. It's not just sibling rivalry. He's made choices, dangerous ones. If he ever turns on you, look deeper. There's more beneath the surface. Protect yourself. Dad. The words blurred for a second. Not from the rain. I sat there frozen, the paper trembling in my hands. He knew. All those years I thought I was the one being paranoid, overreacting. But Dad saw it, maybe even before I did. The room spun slowly. Jealousy, dangerous choices. Look deeper. I read it again. Again. Then I picked up my phone. I called Maris. She answered on the second ring. I found a letter, I said, from Dad, about Cassian. Silence. I heard the faint clink of a glass on her end. He warned me, I continued. Said Cassian was dangerous. A sigh, drawn out. That was a long time ago. You knew he wrote it? I knew he was worried. And you didn't tell me? He was being dramatic. Cassian was a boy, troubled maybe, but not evil. I stood, pacing now, the letter still in my hand. Then explain why Dad would tell me to protect myself from your son. Because he was angry, she snapped. Because he never forgave Cassian for what happened in high school. I stopped pacing. What happened? Silence. I waited. Maris cleared her throat. You already believe the worst, Elyra. Why keep digging? Because I'm being accused of fraud. Because Cassian is trying to destroy my life. And because maybe, if I had read this letter years ago, I'd have been ready. You're exaggerating, she whispered. I'm not. She didn't answer. The line crackled with tension. Then she said something soft. So soft I almost missed it. You were always the threat. I blinked. What? Not to me, she added quickly. To him. You were smarter, more focused. Your father adored you. Cassian felt like a shadow in his own home. That wasn't an excuse. It was a mirror, and I hated what I saw in it. Did Cassian ever do something before? I asked. Something Dad found out about? Maris didn't answer. Instead, she said, You should let this go. Her voice had changed. It wasn't motherly anymore. It was scared. And that scared me more than anything else. I'm not letting anything go, I said. Then I hung up. The rain had picked up, drumming harder now against the windows. I stared out at the city, the lights blurred through the glass. He's made choices. Dangerous ones. What did that mean? I opened my laptop, started typing keywords. Cassian's name, past schools, old articles. Nothing obvious, nothing new, but the internet was only part of the story. My father's words echoed again. Look deeper. I reached for the letter, folded it back along its original crease, slipped it into a folder and tucked it under my arm. I wasn't sleeping tonight. There was one place I hadn't checked in years, Dad's old den, still locked last I heard. But I knew where the key was. 20 minutes later, I was back in front of the house. The shutters didn't sway this time. The whole building seemed to hold its breath. My key turned slowly in the lock. Inside, it smelled like time had stopped. Dust, cedar, something faintly bitter. I walked down the hall, every floorboard groaning beneath me, to the den. The door was still there, closed, untouched. I reached up to the ledge above the frame, felt around, metal, cold, the key. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. Everything was the same. Bookshelves, leather chair, half-burnt candle on the desk, and a filing cabinet in the corner. I crossed the room slowly. My fingers hesitated on the drawer, then pulled. Inside, files, neatly labeled, and one unmarked, thicker than the rest. I slid it out, placed it on the desk, flipped it open. Inside were clippings, legal letters, notes in my father's hand. A name I didn't recognize, and one sentence underlined 3 times. "This debt isn't over. He'll come for her if I don't pay." My breath caught. I heard something. A creak. Floorboards. Outside the room. Footsteps. I froze, heart pounding. Someone else was here. I didn't breathe. Not when the floor creaked again. Not when the footsteps stopped just outside the den. My hand hovered near the desk drawer, where I knew my father used to keep a small pistol, but it was empty, just dust and a rusted paperclip. Whoever it was never opened the door. I waited. A full minute, maybe more. Then, silence. I crept out of the room slowly, every muscle tight, my ears straining for movement. Nothing. By the time I got back to the car, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the city lights faded, until I found myself parked outside the old high school, Boston Academy. Brick walls stained from decades of storms. I hadn't been back since graduation, but something in that letter, in Dad's words, had shaken loose a memory I'd tried to bury. Cassian's first betrayal. It wasn't new. He'd been doing this long before the firm, long before Hartford Holdings. It started when we were kids. I closed my eyes, let the rain tap soft against the windshield, and I let myself go back. Senior year, national debate finals. I was 17, nervous, laser-focused, desperate to win. Cassian was 2 years behind me, always lingering at the edge of everything, watching, smiling too much. I didn't see it at first. The way he hovered near my things, the questions he asked, the way he lingered backstage before the championship round. I won, of course. Top marks, standing ovation. Dad cried. Maris clapped politely. Cassian stood off to the side, arms crossed. I didn't think much of it until the letter came. An anonymous tip to the judges. Plagiarism, cheating, copy-paste analysis. It was a lie, every word of it. But the fallout was brutal. They opened an investigation. I was suspended from the team, my win revoked, my college applications suddenly under review. Dad tried to fight it. But Maris, she asked me quietly, almost gently, "Did you maybe borrow too heavily from one of your old papers?" That was when I knew. She didn't believe me. And Cassian? He was suddenly everywhere. In Dad's study, in meetings with counselors. Helping. One day, I confronted him. We were alone on the back porch, late autumn wind tugging at the hem of my sweater. "I didn't do it," I said. He didn't look up from his phone. People make mistakes. I didn't. He finally met my eyes. There was no guilt there, just cool curiosity, like he was trying to figure out how I'd react. Then he smiled. "You should learn to take a fall better. Makes the comeback more dramatic." That's when I understood. He didn't want to beat me. He wanted me tarnished, dimmed, manageable, and he'd been doing it since we were kids. The school cleared me eventually, quietly. No public apology, just a letter saying, "No further action." But the damage was done. My confidence, my reputation, the trust between me and Dad, all cracked. And Cassian? He went untouched and emboldened. I opened my eyes. The high school looked the same. Cold, quiet, indifferent. I didn't cry. I hadn't back then either. I just drove away. By sunrise, I was back in Boston. I stopped at a small cafe Jasper used to take me to during late-night trial preps. He always said their coffee was stronger than the truth. The barista handed me a steaming cup, and I settled into the corner booth by the window. The city stirred to life outside. Normal people, normal problems. I took a slow sip, let the heat sit on my tongue. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one name in all caps, Maris. She had defended him back then. She was defending him now. And that meant one of two things. Either she was still blind, or she was involved. I thought back to the way her voice shook on the phone. Not angry, not defiant, afraid. But of what? Of losing him? Or of the truth catching up? A part of me still wanted to believe she didn't know. That she was a mother caught between loyalty and guilt. But then I remembered what she said. You were always the threat. Not the victim, not the scapegoat. The threat. To who? To what? The waitress refilled my coffee. I barely noticed. I scribbled more notes. Dad's letter. Hidden debt. File in the cabinet. Maris's fear. Every line pointed to one place. This wasn't just about Cassian resenting me. It was about something they'd buried. Something they never expected me to find. A pattern. A motive. A past they thought was safe. And now, the cracks were showing. I stared out at the morning light spreading over Tremont Street, watching the fog lift off the pavement. My breath fogged the window for a second. I wrote in it with my fingertip. Why now? Why sabotage me now after all these years? The answer hit me harder than I expected. Because I was rising. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't in his shadow. And maybe because something from the past was threatening to resurface. Something worse than jealousy. I opened my phone and pulled up Jasper's number. My thumb hovered over it. But I didn't call. Not yet. Not until I understood what Cassian was willing to destroy me to hide, and who helped him do it. The sun had barely cracked the skyline when I found myself outside Jasper's building. Back Bay was still hushed. The brick sidewalks shimmered from last night's rain, and the scent of wet earth mingled with brewing coffee from the bakery downstairs. I hadn't slept. Didn't plan to. I stood there for a beat, nerves curling in my stomach. Jasper had always been more than a mentor. He was the person who saw through the polish and the poise, the one who knew how much I'd bled to get where I was. I buzzed the intercom. A groggy voice answered, "If this isn't coffee, it better be a crisis." "It's both." A pause. Then the door buzzed open. Jasper's apartment was warm in that antique Boston way, old books, walnut shelves, rugs that had stories. He looked like he hadn't shaved in 2 days, but his eyes were alert. Always had been. He took one look at me and said, "You're not here for small talk." I handed him the folder from the cabinet. "I need you to look into this." He opened it slowly, eyebrows lifting as he flipped through. "I think Cassian's hiding something worse than sabotage," I said. "This goes beyond jealousy, beyond the firm." "Where'd you find it?" "My dad's study, hidden, locked away." He gave a low whistle. "If Victor Novin buried it, it's serious." I sat down on the edge of his desk, my knees bouncing. The letter mentioned a debt, said if he didn't pay, Cassian would come for me. Jasper leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "You think it's financial?" "I don't know, but someone wanted it erased. And if Cassian's trying to ruin me now, maybe it's because I'm getting too close." He nodded slowly. "I'll start with court records, old settlements, juvenile cases, anything sealed or buried." "Would you still have access?" Jasper cracked a dry smile. "I didn't survive 30 years in litigation without knowing which doors still open." For the first time in days, I felt the tiniest flicker of control returning. It wasn't comfort, but it was direction. "Elyra," he said, voice quieter now, "you sure you want to dig this deep?" I looked him square in the eye. "I don't think I have a choice." We spent the next 2 hours pulling up databases, digging through LexisNexis archives, and charting a timeline that stretched too neatly from my father's death to my promotion. Jasper kept shaking his head. "Every breadcrumb leads back to Cassian, but it's like someone swept the trail clean." My fingers tapped restlessly against the desk. Then Jasper froze. He stared at the screen for a moment. "Well, hello." He spun it toward me. It was a sealed juvenile record, name redacted, but the birth year, the Boston zip code, and the signature on the custody release matched Cassian's. My mouth went dry. "Fraud," Jasper said. "At 16, he clicked into the docket. "Forgery of financial documents, expunged after 2 years of rehab and sealed at Maris Holt's petition." I felt the floor shift under me. He's done this before. The realization slammed into me like ice water. All this time, everyone painted Cassian as the misunderstood boy. But my father had known. And Maris? She covered it up. I clenched my jaw. He's repeating the same pattern, only this time with real stakes. A firm, clients, my entire career. Jasper nodded. This changes everything. But the fire inside me sputtered for a second, overtaken by something else. Doubt. What if none of this matters? I whispered. He's charming, connected. People believe him. You're not going to win by playing fair, Jasper said. You're going to win by being undeniable. I nodded, but the thought hung like smoke, thick and choking. That afternoon, I returned to the firm under orders to remain available for interview. The halls felt narrower, the looks sharper. People didn't smile. They nodded tightly, whispered when they thought I wasn't listening. In the bathroom mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Hair pulled tight, eyes rimmed with sleepless bruises, jaw clenched like it was holding back fire. But I had no time for softness now, not when the walls were closing in. Later that night, I lit every lamp in my apartment. The shadows still felt too close. I spread the documents across my dining table, Cassian's record, the forged bank statements, Dad's letter, the name scrawled at the bottom of that mysterious note, illegible but persistent. I'd begun building my case, but the more I gathered, the more Cassian seemed to stay a step ahead. It was after midnight when my phone lit up. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then breathing. And a voice. Low. Familiar. You're digging too deep, Elyra. I went still. Who is this? Click. The line died. I stared at the screen. My heart thundered against my ribs. I turned toward the window. And that's when I saw it, across the street. A dark figure, standing beneath the lamppost, still, watching, not moving, not speaking. Then, gone. I backed away slowly. Whoever it was, they knew I was getting close, but they didn't know me well enough, because fear wasn't going to stop me. It was going to sharpen me. The next morning felt off from the second I opened my eyes. Not just tired, off. There was a stillness in the air, like the world was holding its breath. The kind of silence that comes before something breaks. I stood at my kitchen counter, clutching a mug of coffee I hadn't tasted. The window above the sink reflected my face in the glass, alert, restless, cornered, but not done. My phone buzzed once. Jasper, check your inbox. Found something. I didn't move at first, just stared at the message like it might catch fire. Then I set the mug down and walked to my desk. There it was. A scanned court document. Redacted in parts, but the seal was clear. Cassian Holt. Fraud. He'd been 16. He'd forged his teacher's signature to siphon funds from a school donation account into a shell bank account under a fake charity. The case was sealed, expunged, cleaned with the judge's signature and Maris's plea. But the record still existed. And now I had it. I read the words 3 times, my chest tightening with every line. The confidence, the calculation, the sheer ease with which he'd done it back then, and now again. He hadn't changed. He'd just upgraded his targets. My hand trembled as I closed the laptop. I knew what I had to do. The firm's main conference room looked different in the morning light. Harsher, more exposed. The glass walls that once felt sleek now felt like a cage. I waited until Cassian was alone. He stepped out of the partner's lounge, holding a file, and that usual smug smile that never reached his eyes. I stepped in front of him. We need to talk. He tilted his head, amused. Is this about your dramatic little comeback? I didn't answer, just slid a printed copy of the juvenile record onto the glass table between us. His smile faltered, just a flicker, but I saw it. He glanced down, read the title, the case number. When he looked up again, his face had reset, cool, composed. That's sealed. So was my trust in you, I said, voice calm, even. But here we are. He let out a small laugh. You think anyone's going to care what I did when I was 16? Juvenile records don't win courtrooms, Elyra. They don't have to. I stepped closer. They just have to change the narrative. His jaw clenched. There it was again, another crack. You've built this perfect version of yourself, I whispered. Slick, composed, charming, but underneath, you're the same fraud you've always been. He leaned in, his voice low and razor-sharp. "Careful, this could get a lot uglier." I didn't blink. "It already has." He paused, studying me, searching for fear, but I didn't give him any. Then he smirked. "Don't overplay your hand, sis. Evidence like that goes both ways." I narrowed my eyes. What's that supposed to mean? But he was already turning, walking off like we'd just discussed the weather. I stood there, blood pounding in my ears. Goes both ways. What the hell did he mean? That night, Jasper and I met again. This time at his office, lights dimmed, windows locked. I showed him the full copy of the sealed case. He nodded, grim. This is enough to cast doubt, enough to slow him down. But he said something today, I murmured, like he had a backup plan, or leverage. He's too calm. Because he probably planted landmines, Jasper said. He's had time. The weight of it settled on my chest, thick, suffocating. I need something undeniable, I whispered. Something current. This juvenile case opens the door, but I want the whole house to collapse. Jasper nodded slowly. Then we keep digging. I'll pull his recent financials. You follow the human side. People leave trails. Exes, allies, enemies. I thought of Maris, of the way her voice shook, and of Lena, the associate who always looked at Cassian just a second too long. Maybe we're not the only ones watching him, I said quietly. Outside, the streetlights flickered against the Boston mist. It was just past midnight when I got back to my apartment. I double-locked the door, set my bag on the counter, and there, on the floor inside my doorway, was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no name. I bent slowly, pulse quickening, and picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. "You're getting too close. Back off, or he'll ruin more than just your career." No signature, no return address, but there were fingerprints, greasy smudges I could barely see under the kitchen light. I stared at it, heart hammering. This wasn't a bluff. This was Cassian, or someone working with him, trying to scare me back into silence. But fear had already had its turn. Now it was my move. The note stayed on my kitchen counter for hours, unfolded, untouched, like a loaded gun I refused to pick up again. Back off, or he'll ruin more than just your career. Every word was clean, precise, typed like a corporate memo, but the fear it carried wasn't abstract. It was personal. And whoever sent it knew where I lived. I should have felt shaken. Instead, I felt something else, sharpened. At 9:42 a.m., just as I was about to call Jasper, a knock came at the door. Not heavy, not timid. I paused, listened, peered through the peephole. Lena Voss, of all people. She stood there holding a stainless steel coffee tumbler, her dark hair pulled back tight, eyes darting like she regretted being here already. I opened the door slowly. "Did I forget a meeting?" She exhaled. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in, paused just past the doorway, eyes landing immediately on the note still sitting by the coffee maker, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "I thought so," she murmured. "You recognize it?" "I've seen that kind of warning before." I stared at her. "From who?" She looked at me, then down, then pulled a small USB from her blazer pocket. "This is why I'm here." My pulse kicked. "What is that?" "Something I've been collecting." She placed it on the counter gently, like it might shatter. "Encrypted files from the shared drive. Stuff Cassian didn't think anyone was watching." I blinked. "Wait, you've been tracking him?" She nodded, jaw clenched. "For months. Why?" Lena leaned against the counter, her hand curled tightly around her coffee tumbler. "Because Cassian's been using firm resources for personal gains, covering for offshore accounts, coordinating transfers through dummy projects. He thinks no one notices the code names, but I did." My mind raced. "Why come to me?" "Because you're the only one who's not scared of him." I stared at the USB. My hands itched to plug it in, open everything, but I forced myself to breathe. "And what's on here?" I asked. "Transactions, fake vendors, emails, coded but traceable." My heart was pounding. "You know this could destroy him." She looked me dead in the eye. "That's the point." A silence stretched between us, thick with something unspoken. Finally I asked, "Why now?" She hesitated. Then, "Because he knows I helped you, and I think he's watching me too." My fingers closed over the USB, cold, weighted. like it knew it mattered. "I'll keep you out of it," I said quietly. "You won't be able to," Lena replied, just as quiet. "But thanks for saying that." A beat later, she was gone. I stared at the door after it shut. Then at the USB. I plugged it into my laptop. Password prompt. A sticky note appeared in the folder, typed. Password, Maris's maiden name, caps first letter. My breath hitched. I tried it. It worked. Inside, dozens of folders. Clean, professional, buried in firm directories with names like Q2 Forecast Review and Staffing Structure Conf. I opened the first PDF. It wasn't a forecast. It was a financial transfer form with digital signatures forged under a partner's name. He was stealing from clients, laundering money through internal accounts, using confidential case timelines to time stock buys, and someone else had signed off, initials I didn't recognize yet. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just sabotaging me, he was running a whole operation, and now I had it. I texted Jasper. "E, got something big. Can we meet?" J, "Come now. Back office." His building was only a 15-minute walk, but the air felt heavier with every step. Clouds gathered low over the river. I pulled my coat tighter as I crossed the street. When I got there, he was already waiting in the lobby, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. "You look like hell," he said. "I brought worse," I replied, holding up the drive. Back in his office, I showed him everything. The files, the pattern, the signatures. He leaned forward, brows drawn tight. "This is substantial. We can work with this." Then his voice dropped. "But there's more, isn't there?" I hesitated. "I got a threat," I said. His eyes sharpened. I handed him the note. He read it twice, then exhaled through his nose. "We can trace this. Maybe get prints if it's not too clean." I nodded. "I think Cassian's getting sloppy." "No," Jasper said. "I think he's getting scared." But something in his voice didn't settle me. "If we leak this to the board," I asked, "does it blow back on Lena?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe. Depends how deep she's named. But right now, she's your only credible witness." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. The office lights hummed above us. I should have felt powerful. Instead, I felt exposed. Because if Cassian knew Lena had flipped, he wouldn't hesitate. "I need to warn her," I said, already standing. But Jasper caught my arm. "Wait." "What?" "There's something else." He walked over to the printer and pulled a freshly printed file off the tray. "Just came in through a contact I still have at the courthouse," he said. "They ran Cassian's aliases through a private case index." He handed me the page. I read it, then froze. A corporate entity, foreign, opened under a different name, but the registration address matched Maris's summer house, and beneath it, Lena's name, registered 6 years ago. I looked up at Jasper, voice dry. "She was in on it." He shook his head. "She might have been. Or maybe she got out. Either way, you need to be careful." My thoughts swirled. My throat closed. Had I just walked into another trap? I didn't know. All I knew was this. Lena was either my last hope or the final knife waiting to twist. I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept playing back the file Jasper had handed me, the corporate registration tied to Maris's house, the one with Lena's name buried in the paperwork. My mind kept clawing at one question. Was she in on it from the start? Or just another name Cassian used to cover his tracks? By morning, the fog hadn't lifted, outside or in me. The air was thick with summer heat and Boston grit. I cracked a window in my apartment just to feel something real, then pulled up the USB again, determined to comb through every folder Lena had handed me. Half an hour in, I froze. Buried deep in one subfolder marked Vendor Contracts Archive was a screen grab, grainy, low light, time-stamped a few weeks before the promotion party. Cassian. At night. Meeting someone in a parking garage. Their faces weren't fully visible, but Cassian's posture was unmistakable. Shoulders stiff, suit crisp, arrogance oozing from every inch of him. The other person wore a hoodie, hands shoved in pockets, head turned slightly toward the camera. The frame was silent, but I could hear it. The weight of secrets in that exchange. Whatever passed between them wasn't business. It was strategy. And I hadn't seen this before. Not in anything Lena gave me initially. So why had she hidden it? I copied the image to my desktop, enlarged it, sharpened contrast, nothing. The figure was just shadow, no plate on the car, no street sign. But there, near the curb, a blurry smudge, A parking meter, city-owned, with a mounted surveillance cam on top. I called Jasper immediately. "You said you had friends at City Records," I said. "Not friends," he muttered. "People who owe me drinks." "Can they pull footage from a meter cam?" "If you give me a date and location," he said, suddenly sharper. "I can try. I'll send you everything." And I did. 2 hours later, he called back. "They had a partial archive," he said. "And Elyra, you need to see this." I met him at his office. He had the footage already playing on his laptop. The same garage, same timestamp. But this time, the angle was better. The unknown figure stepped briefly under a flickering light, and I saw the side of their face, sharp jawline, narrow frame, nervous glance over the shoulder. It wasn't Lena. It was a man, and it was someone I'd seen before. I just couldn't place him. Jasper rewound the footage, froze the frame. "Recognize him?" "I've seen that face, I just don't know where." "Dig," he said. "Think." I paced the room. My nails dug into my palm. And then, like ice water down my spine, I remembered. 6 months ago. Company retreat, one of the IT contractors. Quiet, always around the back-end systems. Kept his badge clipped inside his blazer like he didn't want anyone to see it. I snapped my fingers. "Grayson." Jasper blinked. "Grayson?" "His name's Grayson, I think. He worked on the data migration last quarter. Always took direction from Cassian." We both stared at the screen. "That's your witness," Jasper said. "That's who we need to find." And suddenly, the story shifted. Because if Grayson had met Cassian off-site, off-record, there was more happening behind the curtain than I'd imagined. Cassian wasn't just cleaning up loose ends. He was recruiting them. Back at the firm, I pretended everything was fine. Lena passed me in the hallway. We exchanged nods, nothing more. But her eyes lingered a second too long. Was she nervous because she'd helped me? Or because she knew I was getting closer to something bigger? That night, I checked my apartment twice. Locks, blinds, cameras. Nothing had been touched. Except the rug near my entryway. It was slightly off-center. I stared at it, then lifted the edge. A note, just like before. Typed. "This is the last warning. Stop digging, or you'll regret what you find." I crumpled the paper in my fist. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. They knew I had momentum now, and they were scared. Which meant I was closer than ever. But the question clawing at the edge of my thoughts wouldn't go away. Who else knew? And just how far was Cassian willing to go to keep me from the truth? They say truth has a sound. In court, it's not a scream or a confession. It's quieter than that. It's the pause before a gavel strikes. It's the breath someone holds when they realize the story just changed. And that morning, inside the Boston Civil Courthouse, I was ready to let truth speak. I stood just outside the hearing room, heels anchored to marble tile, hands wrapped tightly around my notes. Jasper stood beside me, his presence steady as ever, part strategist, part shield. Through the frosted glass, I could already hear voices, Cassian's among them, confident, clear. He was always good at pretending things weren't falling apart, but today I wasn't here to play defense. Today, I was turning the tide. The clerk opened the door. "We're ready for you." I stepped inside. The conference room was long, sterile, ringed with dark wood and sharp eyes. A temporary panel of 3 partners sat on one side. The firm's general counsel, neutral but alert, on the other. In the middle, Cassian. His suit was immaculate, smile intact. But when his gaze met mine, I saw the twitch. Barely there, but enough. He knew what I had. I sat across from him. My hands didn't shake. The lead partner cleared his throat. "This is an internal evidentiary hearing to address the financial misconduct allegations against Elyra Novan. We'll review new material before determining next steps." Jasper handed over the sealed folder. "We request entry of supplemental documentation." The partner nodded. "Go ahead," I spoke. "I'd like to submit proof of a previously sealed juvenile record belonging to Cassian Holt, documenting a prior conviction for financial fraud and forgery." Murmurs rippled across the table. Cassian's jaw flexed. He leaned forward. "That record was expunged. It's inadmissible." I met his stare. "Not in an internal review, and not when it establishes a pattern of behavior." The lead partner raised a brow. "Let's see it." They reviewed the printout. The silence stretched like elastic. Then I slid the second document across the table. "And here," I said, voice even, "are internal firm transfers and falsified vendor payments traced to Cassian's oversight, found buried in administrative folders. Names were forged, transactions rerouted. Evidence points to financial laundering under Cassian Holt's direction." Someone whispered, "Jesus." Cassian laughed. It was dry, performed. "This is absurd," he said. "Digital files? A sealed record? That's your case?" He turned to the panel. "Anyone can fake a spreadsheet. What we have is an emotional vendetta dressed up as evidence." I didn't blink. "Then why were they hidden?" He opened his hands as if magnanimous. "I don't control the shared drive." "Right," I said softly. "But you do control people, don't you?" His smile faltered. "I have more," I said, laying down the printed photo. "Footage of you meeting with a former IT contractor, off-site late at night. That contractor has since vanished, but he was on payroll 2 months before my accusation, and he had access to every financial system in our firm." I looked at the panel. Cassian Holt orchestrated a digital frame job. He created a falsified trail to make it look like I'd embezzled funds from the Hartford account. Then he used his influence to spread doubt during a party meant to celebrate my promotion. The room was still. No one moved. Cassian stood suddenly, eyes narrow. "None of that holds in a courtroom." "This isn't a courtroom," I said. "It's your reputation, and it's cracking." The general counsel spoke up. "We'll recess and reconvene after review. A full audit will proceed." Cassian scoffed. "You're suspending me? Based on what? A vendetta and some grainy footage?" "No," the partner said. "We're suspending you based on patterns, and because you've clearly made enemies who know where to look." The hearing was adjourned. I stood, breath tight in my chest. Cassian leaned in as I passed. "You think this ends me?" he hissed. "This is just a bruise, not a break." I didn't look at him. "Everyone bleeds somewhere, Cassian. You just haven't realized where yet." Outside, the wind hit harder than expected. Jasper followed me onto the steps. "You did it." "Not yet," I said, but I cracked the glass. We sat on a nearby bench, the weight of the moment pressing down between us. "Think they'll fire him?" I asked. "They'll investigate first," Jasper replied, "but the seed is planted." I let that settle. My body slumped for a breath, a release I hadn't let myself feel. But beneath it all, something still tugged at me. The footage, the meeting, Grayson. He hadn't just vanished. He'd disappeared right after that night. And the note, the second warning on my floor. Someone else was still moving in the shadows. This wasn't over, not even close. I wasn't expecting her to answer, but she did, on the first ring. "Maris," her voice was tight. "Elyra." There was a pause thick enough to step into. "We need to talk," I said. She sighed. "I figured you'd call after the hearing." "I'm not calling about the firm." Silence. I continued. "I found the shell company registered to your house, the one Cassian's been laundering money through." Still no reply. "And Lena's name is on it." A long exhale, then, "Where are you?" "Outside your place." The line went dead. A minute later, her front door creaked open. Maris stood there in a robe and heels, her lipstick already smudged, like she'd been arguing with herself in the mirror. "Come in," she muttered. Her house hadn't changed. Same glass sculptures, same scent of cinnamon and denial. She led me to the back sunroom, white couches, filtered light, the ghost of afternoon tea. I sat. She didn't. "You want the truth," she said, staring out the window. "Fine." I waited. She turned, slow, deliberate. "Yes, I helped him." The words didn't hit like a slap. They landed like a truth I already knew but hadn't wanted confirmed. My throat tightened. "Why?" "Because he was spiraling," she snapped. "After your father died, after you got the firm's attention, he felt like nothing. You had everything. You always did." My jaw clenched. "So you forged documents for him?" "I didn't forge anything. I smoothed some paperwork, put my name where it helped. That's not the same." "It is." She looked at me then, eyes wet but defiant. "I thought I was protecting him," she said, quieter now. "Keeping him from prison. I didn't know it would get this bad." I stood. "You didn't want to know." She flinched. "Maybe." I paced, the air too thick to breathe. "Do you understand what he's done? What he tried to do to me?" "Yes," she said. "But it's more complicated than that." I stopped. How? Maris walked over to the fireplace, pulled out a small box, and opened it. Inside were legal papers, notes in my father's handwriting, and something else. Photos. Old ones. Cassian, younger. Dad. A man I didn't recognize. "This is the man Victor owed money to," she said. "His name was Maxwell Dre. He ran an offshore scheme. Cassian got caught up in it as a teenager. That fraud case you found? It wasn't just about pride. It was debt. Real, dangerous debt." My stomach turned. "Dad knew?" "Yes, and he made a deal to protect Cassian. Signed over assets, cut ties with Dre's circle. But the threat never really disappeared." She handed me a letter, my father's handwriting again. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. They'll come for her next. Tell her everything. Don't let her walk into this blind." I sank into the couch, the paper crinkling in my grip. "All this time," I whispered, "I thought Cassian was just jealous, vindictive. But it wasn't just me he hated." Maris sat across from me now, her voice raw. "He blamed Victor for not fixing it. Blamed you for being the favored one. Blamed the world. That kind of rage doesn't go away. It festers." I looked up. "He threatened you, didn't he?" Her face broke then, just a crack. "Yes." She reached into the fireplace again and pulled out a phone, burner style, cheap, battered. "He left this on my porch 3 nights ago. It had a recording, my voice, edited, talking about shifting funds. If he ever goes down, he'll take me with him." "So he's been blackmailing you," I said. Her shoulders sagged. "I thought if I helped him once it would be enough. It never is." I stood, every nerve humming with a new kind of fury. "You need to testify." She blinked. "What?" "Back me up. Tell the board, the court, everything. We connect the shell company to the firm accounts. Prove he's been funneling money under false names. Your signature puts it all in context." "I'll lose everything," she said. "You already did," I said softly. "You just haven't faced it yet." She looked at me for a long moment, then finally nodded. "I'll do it." My breath caught, not in relief but in readiness. One final nail. We left together, her coat pulled tight, my phone already buzzing with Jasper's number. He answered before I could speak. "Tell me you're not alone." "I'm with Maris. We're on our way." "What happened?" "She's ready to talk." He paused. "Then it's time." But as I pulled onto Beacon Street, headlights flared in my rearview mirror. Too close, too bright. I glanced at Maris. "Someone's following us," I said. Her hands clutched the armrest. "It's him." My pulse spiked. The car behind us swerved left, then vanished into the side street. Gone. But the message was clear. He knew, and he was going to make his final move. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. Maris sat rigid in the passenger seat, clutching her coat like armor. I kept my eyes on the road, checking the rearview mirror every few blocks. The car that tailed us was gone, or maybe just waiting for the right moment. By the time we reached Jasper's office, the sky had cracked open with a light drizzle. A thin veil of rain tapped against the windshield as I cut the engine. "You still want to do this?" I asked. Maris nodded, her voice low but certain. "I'm tired of hiding." Inside, Jasper met us with 2 cups of strong coffee and a folder already prepped. He glanced at Maris but didn't say anything, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat down and started talking. It took 35 minutes. She confessed everything, how she signed the incorporation paperwork, helped open the offshore account, even filed supporting documentation for Cassian's philanthropic trust. "I didn't realize he was using it to move stolen money," she said, eyes hollow. "Not at first, but once I did, I was in too deep." Jasper recorded everything, noting timestamps, checking the authenticity of her supporting files. When she handed over the burner phone Cassian had left her, I saw his eyebrows lift slightly. "This'll do," he murmured. I should have felt something like triumph. Instead, I just felt tired. We were close, I knew it, but close doesn't mean safe. Jasper copied the digital files from the burner, eyes flicking across the messages. Then he froze. "What?" I asked. He clicked into a hidden folder, opened a video file. On screen, Cassian appeared. In a suit, seated in some hotel room, calm, controlled, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means the game's already tipped." My stomach tightened. Cassian smiled. "So let me be clear. Whatever Elyra thinks she has, she doesn't know the whole story. She never did. And if she tries to use my mother to take me down, she'll go down with us." The screen went black. I stared at Jasper. Was that a bluff? He didn't answer. Instead, he clicked into the video metadata. It's timestamped 2 weeks ago, uploaded to a private cloud, scheduled release trigger if his account goes inactive. Blackmail insurance. Jasper nodded. He's setting a trap. Anyone who takes the fall with him, he drags them deeper. Maris, you especially. Maris's voice was quiet. He always said he'd protect me. I just didn't realize it came with chains. The weight in the room thickened. The silence that followed said more than words could, but I wasn't letting him win. "I want to bring this into court," I said. "Public hearing, no more whispers in boardrooms." "You'll need the USB, Jasper said. "The encrypted one, the one Lena gave you." "I still have it." "Good. Then that, paired with this new confession, will break him. Unless he finds a way to break Lena first." Maris blinked. "You think she's still in danger?" "I think Cassian doesn't leave loose ends." I texted Lena immediately. "E, where are you?" "It's urgent." No reply. "E, call me." Nothing. I turned to Jasper. "I'm going to her apartment." Maris reached for my arm. "Be careful." "I will, but if we wait, she might not get another chance." The rain had picked up by the time I got there. Lena's building loomed ahead, dark windows and ivy crawling up red brick like veins. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. A neighbor peeked through their peephole across the hall. "Lena!" I called. "It's Elyra. I just need to talk." Silence. I turned the knob. It was unlocked. My pulse spiked. I stepped inside slowly, every creak of the hardwood beneath me a warning. The lights were off. A half-full mug of tea sat on the kitchen counter. Her laptop was open, screen dimmed, humming softly. But Lena was gone. I scanned the apartment. No signs of struggle, no broken glass, but something felt off. The air was too still. Then I saw it. A note, typed, taped to the inside of the front door. "I did what I could, but we're not done. L." My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled it off the door. She'd vanished. Again. And this time, she might have done it on purpose. Back at Jasper's office, I handed him the note. "She's running," I said. "Or she was forced to." He read it twice, then looked up. "Cassian's scrambling. That's what this means. He's losing control." "But if he finds her first?" "He won't," Jasper said, "because we're going to use everything we have. The confession, the evidence, the note, the financial trail." "And the courtroom?" He nodded. "Final hearing, scheduled tomorrow. And this time, we're going in prepared." I exhaled, slowly. After everything, it all comes down to this. But one question still echoed louder than the rest. Where the hell did Lena go? The courthouse hallway felt colder than usual, not because of the air conditioning, but because of what I was about to do. I stood there with Jasper and Maris on either side of me. She hadn't spoken much since Lena vanished. Her eyes were rimmed in fatigue, but her back was straight, shoulders squared, ready. For once we were walking into the same storm, together. Inside, the room buzzed with tension. Firm partners, internal counsel, court-appointed auditors, even a few media faces lingering in the back, drawn by the whispers. Cassian was already seated. Polished suit, perfect cufflinks, calm, too calm. But he didn't look at me. The hearing opened with formality, legal jargon, review of prior findings. But when the judge invited new testimony, I stood without hesitation. I handed over the USB. "My name is Elyra Novin," I said. "This flash drive contains the data we believe will prove Cassian Holt committed corporate fraud, document forgery, and money laundering through a network of shell companies." The judge nodded. "Proceed." I stepped aside as Jasper projected the files, transaction logs, forged approvals, time-stamped communications. Maris's voice trembled slightly as she confirmed her role. She admitted her signature, explained the pressure, laid bare the blackmail. Then came the video. Cassian speaking into the camera from that hotel room, his so-called contingency. It played in full. He didn't flinch once while it aired, but when it ended, the room felt different. He stood. "No one here can say they've never made a bad call," he said. "I protected my mother. I ran a few transfers. That doesn't make me a criminal. It makes me practical." He He turned to the board. "You've all bent rules before. Don't act like you haven't." But no one met his eyes. He looked at me then, just for a second, and I saw it, the flicker. Not rage, not guilt, just fear, wearing the last mask it had left. The judge cleared his throat. "This court recommends immediate internal disciplinary action and full cooperation with state prosecution. Mr. Holt, you are suspended indefinitely pending charges." Cassian's jaw locked. He didn't protest. He just sat back down. I walked past him on the way out, didn't say a word, but he looked up, whispered, "You think you've won?" I paused. "No," I said. "I survived. There's a difference." Outside, Boston pulsed like it always had. Impatient taxis, honking horns, damp sidewalks still shining from last night's rain. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's secrets, only my own. Jasper joined me on the steps. "He'll probably cut a deal," he said. "Maybe serve time, but his name won't hold weight again. Not here." "That's enough," I said. We didn't need handcuffs to win. We needed truth. And daylight. Maris stayed behind for a moment longer. When she finally came out, she looked smaller, but lighter. She met my eyes. "Thank you," she said. I nodded. "Let's not pretend this fixes everything." "I know," she said, "but it's a start." She turned and walked away down the sidewalk, into the noise of a city that didn't care what we'd survived. I looked up. The clouds had cleared. Pale sun cut through the skyline. Back home, I placed the letter from my father back in its envelope, tucked it into a drawer, not to forget, but to finally let it rest. I still hadn't heard from Lena. No calls, no emails, just that last note. We're not done. Part of me wanted to hunt her down, ask what else she knew, what else she was protecting. But another part, maybe the wiser part, understood. Some people walk away to protect themselves. Some disappear to protect you. I may never know which she was. But I know this. Family isn't just who raises you. It's who rises with you. And sometimes redemption comes not from revenge, but from refusing to stay buried in someone else's ruin. Thank you for staying with me through this. If you've ever fought back against betrayal, if you've ever clawed your way through someone else's lies to reclaim your own name, this story was for you. Like, comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I'll be waiting in the next one.